surfing, whoa, 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 whoa. Big Island surfing, and it's breakfast with Bob.
And Poncho Man, everybody! Welcome to day 4 of Breakfast with Bob. We're brought to you by HOKA, Polar, UCAN, Velofix, Normatec, Active, Canyon Bicycles, Form Goggles, and Amp Human. We'll be doing our championship edition at Four Seasons Resort, Hualalai. Our next guest is 3-time Ironman champion, coming off an incredibly impressive performance at Ironman Mont Tremblant. Give it up for Mr. Cody Beals. Look at all the Canadian flags. Oh, my God. Yeah, baby. I like it. These guys follow you everywhere?
Oh, yeah. I've got a great fan squad here.
I
It's
can
awesome.
say.
Love it.
Yeah. Okay, so how does a physics guy get into this silliness, this triathlon stuff?
You know, 6 years into this career, I'm still kind of scratching my head over that. I feel like I'm tumbling deeper down the rabbit hole every year. So after I graduated, I kind of suffered through this degree I didn't particularly love, and I gave myself a year to pursue triathlon, kind of as a personal reward.
So you had been in triathlon, high school, and that whole time?
Yeah, I mean, I got
little bit?
I got my start as a competitive swimmer as a kid, just summer
Yeah.
league swim team, very low key. And my parents were avid runners and cyclists, so I was kind of dabbling in that. Did my first triathlon when I was 16, but didn't really go all in until after I graduated.
Yeah. And then you get your degree, you're down a career path, but it just wasn't what you wanted.
Yeah, so I had this fantastic job doing environmental science consulting work, super flexible, which is every triathlete's dream.
Yes.
And as much as I enjoyed it and as much as it was paying well, it just didn't light my fire to the extent that triathlon did. So about 6 years ago, I made the decision to go pro, and I haven't really looked back since then.
So you didn't ease into the part-time thing. You were like, I'm going pro. Did you keep your job at all? Or?
Well, in fact, I was able, due to the nature of the work, I could kind of dial that back as triathlon ramped up. So it was a pretty good position to be in. I didn't have to have that pressure and stress of
Sure.
quitting the job cold turkey and just committing to triathlon 100%.
Now, your family, when family obviously is the whole idea is college, career, move on, kids, all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, I think I'm going to be a professional triathlete. How does that go over?
They were actually extremely supportive, and I'm so grateful for that. They both really got it right away. And to be honest, after I graduated, I went back to live at their place and only recently bought my own house 2 years ago.
Really?
So I lived there for 4 years while I was training. And like many pro triathletes, over my first few seasons, made next to no money from the sport. So I'm really grateful they not only got it, but were able to support me by letting me live there.
When did you have the race that told you, okay, I made the right decision. This is where my future is?
You know, Bob, there was really no aha moment. There were a couple points that were sort of cornerstone turning points of my career, I would say. The first was before I was even pro. My first half-distance race, I went under 4 hours, set the provincial championship record, and I had no inkling of going pro at that point, but thankfully I had mentors around me who started to indicate that this is perhaps something I could hack it at.
Right.
And I still didn't really believe them. I was really skeptical that people could earn a living like scampering around in spandex, frankly. And the next turning point was really my Ironman debut last year at Mont Tremblant 2018, where I won and set the course record and surprised myself really even more than anyone else.
Well, and more impressively, Lionel Sanders was in that field, and you beat Lionel basically in your home country. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, so Lionel and I go way back. I like to joke that I finished second more times to Lionel than any other athlete in the world.
So did you run track against him as well? Or
I think
cross country?
we both ran varsity cross country in Ontario, Canada, and I think we overlapped a couple years. I didn't know him at the time, but if we look at some old results, we probably were in the same race, and he would have been at the front of the field, and I would have been closer to the back at the time. I've kind of been a late bloomer in that regard.
Wow. And so when you do that, because that was sort of your announcement to the world, when you win Mont Tremblant, you break the course record, and you knock off Lionel, people are like, okay, this guy's the real deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every interview I do, Lionel comes up, and he's
Yes.
certainly no other athlete has upped my game more than Lionel, and so I'm pretty used to talking about Lionel.
And isn't your coach, wasn't he formerly Lionel's coach?
Yeah, that's right. They work together.
So you've got a guy as a coach who understands sort of how to beat Lionel.
Yeah, I kept David Tilbury Davis around my entire pro career, and he's really one of the masters when it comes to Kona. He
Right.
operates pretty quietly behind the scenes, but he's got quite a pedigree here with his athletes.
And this is your first time here.
That's right, very first time on the island. I was encouraged to come here and start the apprenticeship earlier on before I even qualified to check it
Yeah.
out. And I kind of resisted that idea. I figured I wanted to come here for the first time when I was ready to race.
When you were ready to race. And what are your impressions so far of the island?
Well, I knew it was going to be hot and windy, but it's something else. My first day, I was the complete noob out there, sprinting down a leaky drive with no shirt on, getting a brutal sunburn. So I have new respect for the Hawaiian sun.
Yes. And then riding out towards Hawaii, what did you think?
Yeah, I've only got about 40K out that direction, so not all the way to the turnaround. Certainly the crosswinds were strong, but I'm told some days they can be really something else, which I haven't experienced yet.
And you're not one of those guys who's looking at the weather forecast and going, oh, it's going to be windy this weekend. You just figure whatever it is, I'll deal with.
Yeah, exactly. I really don't scrutinize the forecast. We all have to deal with it. If I know it's going to inform some of my equipment selections, I'll take a look. Right. And I have a rough sense of what we're going to be facing out there. I don't need to know the nitty-gritty details.
Your physics background, how does that play into what you're doing now? Or does it?
It does, actually, a little bit. So in my undergrad, I was really focused on aerodynamics. And, I mean, that's pretty damn relevant to cycling, right?
Yeah.
So I've actually had a chance to do a lot of wind tunnel testing with my bike sponsor, Ventum, and also some virtual wind tunnel testing with 4Eyes, another sponsor. So I think I've been one of the most tested athletes aerodynamically over more than half a dozen trips in the wind tunnel the last few years.
Any surprises going into the wind tunnel? I mean, a lot of times you go in and you think, I think I'm pretty well set up. What'd you come away with?
Absolutely. So, with that physics background and all this experience, I thought I had a pretty good handle on aerodynamics. But every time I do more testing, I have a greater appreciation for just how subtle and complex and counterintuitive that science can be. So right. It always leaves me with more questions than answers, really.
So what would you, being a first-timer here, you're not the type of guy to be intimidated, obviously. When you went to Mont Tremblant, you first Ironman, you not only win but break the course record. And this year, you were even more dominant. What's your goal for this race?
So I've been pretty public about the fact that I want to be top 10 here.
Yeah.
But I've also said many times and learned from experience that I'm really at my best when I'm not fixated on an outcome, rather when I'm focused on a process.
Right.
And so there's kind of been some tension between those two things. On one hand, no one cares who finishes 11th or worse here, and no one makes money, outside the top 10.
That's true.
So I came here with the intention and the preparation to be top 10, but that's contributed to a lot of anxiety and pressure that I felt. So I've kind of had to reacquaint myself with that lesson. It's more about the process. And I also felt like this was originally supposed to be sort of a 2 or 3 year plan. And I sort of caved to sponsor, fan, media pressure to be here this year. And about a month ago, I had to face the fact that I didn't feel like I had good intrinsic reasons to be here. And I've had to come up with those over the past month over quite a process of soul searching and reflection.
So you weren't convinced that you should come here this year, even though you qualified?
No. In fact, last year at Ironman Chattanooga, which I won, Matt Russell, who finished second, asked me at the podium ceremony, are you even going to take your slot? And I hesitated right up until they asked me. And I sort of just said yes. I froze and panicked and said yes, and kind of put it out of my mind until about a few months ago when I realized, oh, this is just around the corner. I better...
So how have you really, your Chattanooga, obviously, Mont Tremblant, did you change your training specific to this race?
No. So I made some significant changes before Mont Tremblant.
Okay.
And I didn't feel the need to reinvent the wheel after that. Last year, I won Mont Tremblant and won Chattanooga 6 weeks apart. The gap between Tremblant and Kona is 8 weeks this year. I know from experience I retain fitness well. So frankly, I've done very little over the past 8 weeks, and I'm coming here really fresh and with the same or better fitness than Mont Tremblant.
I love the fact that that you're not totally obsessed with this thing. It's like, hey, I did Chattanooga 6 weeks after. This time I'm doing Kona 8 weeks after. What's the big difference?
There's a lot of conventional wisdom that suggests that doing a hard Ironman late in the summer or even in September is a terrible idea that will completely hamstring your chances of a good Kona.
Right.
But we're seeing the new guard of triathlon demonstrating again and again that that's just patently false.
Well, Lindsey Corbin always does Wisconsin and always does well here. Peter Reed did Canada and won here.
Matt Russell, sixth last year, 2 weeks after Chattanooga.
Matt Russell's a little different. That guy, I think he did an Ironman yesterday. So it's just a different world. That guy will do an Ironman. It just says if somebody says, hey, I got a bagel over here, he'll go do an Ironman. So,
I'm not going to comment on that.
Hey, everybody, how about a round of applause for Mr. Cody Beals? Thank you, Cody. You're great.
Thanks
really
a lot,
fun to chat with.
With Bob.
Poncho Man!